Maria always knew that her life would be a story of overcoming obstacles. From a very young age, she faced challenges that would shape not only her character, but also her worldview. The daughter of immigrants, she grew up in a poor neighborhood, surrounded by financial difficulties and a lack of opportunities that often left her at the mercy of society's indifference. However, in the midst of adversity, Maria found the determination that would lead her to follow a different path. After much effort, she managed to get a scholarship to a private school, where her talent and intelligence stood out. Maria worked hard, balancing her studies with temporary jobs to help support her family. Each achievement brought her closer to her dream of becoming an entrepreneur. When she finished college, she decided that she wanted to not only be successful, but also to change the lives of others along the way. With a bold vision and entrepreneurial spirit, Maria founded a chain of luxury hotels, each reflecting her commitment to inclusion and diversity. Her hotels were known not only for their exceptional service, but also for the way they treated their employees and guests. Maria always believed that every person, regardless of their background, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. But as the chain grew, Maria began to notice a disturbing change in the work environment. The staff, who had previously been supportive and understanding, began to display a dismissive attitude toward homeless people. The contrast between the opulence of the hotel and the poverty she saw outside its doors disturbed her deeply. To her, each of these men and women was a reflection of who she could have been, had she not found opportunities to change her fate. Sitting in her living room, surrounded by awards and recognition, Maria looked out the window, watching the city pulsate with life, but also with inequality. The image of an elderly man sitting on the floor, asking for help, made her heart sink. The scene was not new, but now it seemed different, closer. She felt that as a leader, she had a responsibility to do something about it. An idea began to take shape in her mind. What would happen if she experienced the life of a homeless person? This idea made her hesitant, but curiosity and a desire to understand overcame her fears. Maria decided that she needed to understand the reality of those living on the margins. Disguising herself as a homeless person would be the first step to truly experiencing what they felt. So she planned an experience that, although challenging, could be transformative for both her and her team. With her heart racing, Maria began to prepare herself. She knew that this journey would lead her to confront not only the indifference of others, but also her own prejudices and the way she viewed life. The idea both attracted and frightened her. Maria was about to plunge into a world that, although it was her past, still held shadows that she hoped she would never have to revisit. This decision to go undercover wasn't just an act of curiosity, it was a test of empathy, a call to action that would propel her to transform her hotel into a place that not only offered luxury, but also was a haven of compassion and humanity. As Maria prepared for the experience, she felt a mix of anxiety and determination. The road ahead would be difficult, but she was ready to let go of her insecurities and connect with the truth that had always accompanied her, even in the darkest moments of her life. The first light of morning was streaming through Maria's office window, but her focus was far from her spreadsheets and scheduled appointments. Her mind was racing with the decision she had made. Her homeless disguise was becoming more than an experiment. It was a mission. She felt a growing responsibility to not just observe, but to understand the life stories unfolding in those she had previously only seen from a distance. That day at the hotel began like any other. Maria walked through the front door, her impeccable uniform and confident demeanor marking her as the successful owner she was. However, as she greeted the staff and guests, a sense of unease settled over her. Empty conversations and disdainful glances out the window meant that empathy seemed in short supply. She remembered the elderly man she had seen the day before, but her heart sank when she realized that many of her employees were looking at these individuals as if they were invisible. It was during a meeting with the managers that the discomfort turned to indignation. One of the managers mentioned an event that was going to be taking place at the hotel, where celebrities and influencers would be in attendance. He made a joke about keeping the homeless away, which provoked laughter from those present. Maria sat silently, watching the dynamics. The environment she had created, where everyone was supposed to feel valued, seemed to be crumbling. After the meeting, she decided to confront them. Maria stood up and looked each of them in the eye. "You know that those who live on the streets are no less worthy than us. Each of them has a story, a life. We can be the change this city needs, but we must first learn to see them as human," she said, her voice firm. Reactions varied. Some seemed embarrassed, others disconcerted. One manager, more sensitive, apologized, while others simply looked away. The impact of Maria's speech was immediate, but resistance to the topic of inclusion was evident. For many, indifference had become a way of life, a defense against what they did not want to face. Maria left the room feeling frustrated, but also with a fire burning inside her. It was clear that talking was not enough. She needed to do something deeper, more engaging. An idea began to dawn on her. What if she could teach empathy through direct experience? As she walked through the hotel, her thoughts took her back to that morning with the elderly man. The memory of his expression, a mix of despair and hope, wouldn't leave her. Maria realized that in her role as a businesswoman, she needed to be more than just an observer. She needed to connect, and to do that, she needed to strip herself of her privileged position. Once again, the idea of disguise came to mind, but this time with more clarity. Maria decided that she would infiltrate her own hotel. Disguised as a homeless woman, she could see for herself how the staff interacted with those who had less. It was a way to force not only herself, but everyone around her, to confront the realities they preferred to ignore. This decision was not easy. Fear of what she would find, of what she might face, weighed heavily on her heart. But her determination to bring about real change overcame her fears. She knew that this journey would take her to a place of vulnerability, but also of self-discovery. By adopting this new identity, Maria would not only become Lucia, but she would also gain a new perspective on the life she so desperately wanted to change. As the day wore on, she began to plan her transformation. What would she wear? How could she go unnoticed? Maria felt excited and nervous at the same time, and the idea of shedding her status intrigued her. At that moment, she realized that her true journey was about to begin. Maria knew that by immersing herself in an unfamiliar world, she would encounter not only pain and dehumanization, but also strength and resilience that often lay hidden beneath the surface. So, with a new sense of purpose, she prepared to become not just an observer, but an active participant in the story of her community. The days that followed were filled with meticulous preparations. Maria, now identified as Lucia, began gathering everything she needed for her new, temporary life on the streets. She decided that she would wear loose, worn-out clothing, something that would make her seem ordinary and invisible to society. A simple shirt, an old coat, and a pair of worn-out sneakers became her go-to outfits. To complete her disguise, she learned how to apply makeup that could make her face look pale and tired. Every detail counted, and she wanted to lose herself in the role she was about to play. On the chosen day, Maria felt as if she were entering a new world. Before leaving the comfort of her hotel, she looked in the mirror, admiring how much she had managed to transform herself. The reflection that stared back at her was that of someone who had lived on the streets for a while. A feeling of adrenaline washed over her, mixed with a touch of fear. It was a feeling she had not experienced in years, a reminder of the difficult times her family had endured. But once again, her determination to make a difference overcame her fears. Leaving the hotel, Maria took a deep breath and launched herself into the unknown. Each step took her away from the familiar and comfortable environment she had always known. The streets were alive with the lives of people rushing about, ignoring those who were homeless. She saw men and women leaning against the walls, some with expressions of despair, others just waiting for time to pass. At first, she was haunted by the fear of being discovered. Maria wondered if anyone would recognize her, but over time, she began to lose herself in her new identity. Sitting on a park bench, she began to watch and listen. Whispers of stories and experiences filled the air, and Lucia began to absorb each fragment. Conversations of loneliness, hardship, and lost hopes floated around her, and to her surprise, she began to realize that many of them had a strength that inspired her. As the sun set, Lucia met up with other homeless people. One of them, a man named Carlos, offered her a sandwich he had found. "Are you here alone?" "It's dangerous at night," he said with a look of genuine concern. Carlos's gesture of kindness touched Maria deeply. Amidst so much pain, there was a spirit of camaraderie and solidarity that she had not expected to find. Lucia shared a bit of her fictional story with Carlos, telling of a wasted life, of broken promises. He listened intently and, in return, began to tell her about his own life. How he had once been a talented artist, but life had led him down a dark path. Their stories intertwined, creating an unexpected bond. Maria realized that behind every tired face was a unique and valuable story. As the days went by, Maria adapted to this new routine. She began to understand what it meant to live on the streets, the constant struggle for survival, and the emotional toll that came with every nasty look. But she also began to see the beauty in the little things. The moments of shared joy, the laughter, and the community strength that emerged even in the most challenging circumstances. It was a perspective that was transforming her, a lesson she knew she needed to take back to her hotel. But it wasn't just life on the streets that was shaping Maria. It was the need to confront her own worldview. On a particularly difficult day, when the loneliness felt overwhelming, she saw a group of tourists walking by, laughing. One of them, a woman, turned and grimaced when she saw Lucia. The woman's indifference cut her like a knife. Maria felt anger and pain building inside her. It wasn't just the pain of being looked down upon, but the pain for everyone there, invisible to society. This experience made her reflect on her position as a businesswoman and leader. Real change would not come from words alone, but from concrete actions. Changing her perspective was essential, but even more important was that her team felt the same change. She was increasingly convinced that she needed to speak out and use her influence to promote inclusion. As night fell, Maria, now Lucia, lay down in a safe corner, wrapped in a worn blanket she had scavenged. As she gazed up at the stars, she felt a surge of gratitude and a deep connection with the universe. In that moment, she realized that her mission was just beginning. There was so much more to learn, and she was determined to become an agent of change. With her heart full of new hope, she fell asleep, dreaming not only of a better future for herself, but for everyone who crossed her path. Waking up as Lucia was a different experience for Maria. The sun was already high, and the sounds of the city filled the air. The aroma of fresh coffee and freshly baked bread drifted from a nearby bakery, but for her, these smells blended with the reality of her new life. The first thing she did was stretch, feeling the stiffness of sleeping on a hard surface. The physical discomfort was insignificant compared to the life experience she was gaining. When she got up, Lucia found Carlos sitting at the entrance of a cafe, watching the people passing by. He greeted her with a smile, and Maria felt that the connection between them was growing stronger every day. Carlos was becoming a friend, someone who shared not only experiences, but also hope. After some deep and moving conversations, Carlos decided to take her to a local shelter where they could find food and a place to stay for the night. Upon arriving, Maria found a welcoming environment. The shelter was simple, but the walls were adorned with paintings and photographs taken by the residents. Each image told a story of struggle and resilience, and she felt that each one was a testament to the human spirit. While at the shelter, Maria had an idea that could be key to her mission. If she could gather some of these stories and display them in her hotel, perhaps she could open the eyes of her staff and guests to the realities of life on the streets. She knew that by giving voice to these experiences, she could create a deeper connection between those living in different situations. After a few conversations, Carlos was excited about Maria's idea. "Stories have power. They can change hearts," he said, his expression showing the determination they both shared. He suggested that they find other homeless people so they could tell their stories and create a unique exhibit. Maria knew that with each story, she could touch the lives of many people. Over the next few days, Maria, Lucia, began interviewing other homeless people, each willing to share their experiences. The stories were diverse. Those who had lost loved ones, those who had struggled with addiction, and those who simply couldn't keep up with the relentless pace of modern life. As she listened, Maria felt her heart break and unite at the same time. The pain and struggle were palpable, but there was also resilience and hope in each story. She documented everything, capturing every emotion, every smile, every tear. Each story was a piece of the puzzle that made up the human experience. During one of these interviews, Maria met Anna, a young mother who had lost her job and, with it, her home. The despair in her eyes touched her deeply. Anna spoke fondly about her daughter and the dreams she had for her, and Maria could not hold back her tears. In that moment, she realized how valuable each of these lives was and how worthy of recognition. The connection she was creating with these individuals made her feel alive in ways she never imagined. Every interaction, every shared story, was shaping her worldview. As Lucia, she was experiencing empathy in its purest form, and it was empowering. As the stories piled up, Maria began planning the exhibit. She wanted the event to be more than just a presentation. She wanted it to be a true celebration of lives that were often forgotten. Working with Carlos and other homeless people, she decided that the event would include not only written stories, but also artistic performances where residents could express their experiences through music and art. With each passing day, Maria became more passionate about her mission. The idea of changing the narrative, of creating a space where people could see and hear voices that were often ignored, excited her. As the date of the exhibition approached, the feeling of anticipation grew. Maria knew that this was not just a presentation, but an invitation to change. During the final preparations, Maria, Lucia, reflected on her journey up to this point. Looking back, she realized that the vulnerability she had embraced had made her stronger and more aware. The experience of living as Lucia had not only connected her with others, but had also helped her reconnect with herself. In a world where empathy is often forgotten, she was determined to bring that strength back to her hotel and her community. With her heart filled with hope, Maria knew the exhibition would be the catalyst she needed to bring about meaningful change. As the evening approached, she prepared for the event with the expectation that the voices that had been silenced would finally be heard. The day of the expo arrived, and Maria, now Lucia, woke up with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The atmosphere in the shelter was electrically charged. There was a palpable energy between everyone involved. The homeless people, who had become friends and allies, were excited, ready to share their stories with the world. Maria knew this was a pivotal moment, not only for them, but for the community around them. Throughout the morning, she devoted herself to the final preparations. The space was decorated with artwork created by the residents, and each story was printed on a large panel, waiting to be read. Maria had decided that the event would be open to the public, which meant that both hotel guests and community members would be present. It was a perfect opportunity to bring together different realities and foster dialogue. As the exhibition began, Maria felt her heart race. The doors opened and a crowd began to gather. She was there like Lucia, watching the faces of visitors approaching the panels. Her first reaction was one of surprise, but it was soon followed by curiosity. People who had previously looked on with indifference were now coming closer to read, to listen, to connect. Carlos, who had become one of the keynote speakers, was ready to share his story. He stepped onto the small makeshift stage and, with a shaky voice, began to talk about his life. He described his dreams, his failures, and most importantly, the love he still had for art. The audience was attentive, and Maria noticed tears in the eyes of many in the audience. Carlos' story resonated, touching hearts that had previously been distant. Next, it was Anna's turn. With her son in her arms, she took the stage and spoke about her hopes for the future, the daily struggles, and the strength she found in motherhood. Her voice was strong, despite the tremors in her hands. The audience fell silent, absorbing every word. When Anna finished, the room erupted in applause, and Maria couldn't help but feel a surge of pride in her courage and resilience. The next few hours were filled with meaningful sharing and discussion. People began asking questions, becoming more interested in the lives that were before them. The event was acting as a catalyst for empathy. Maria watched conversations flow between visitors and homeless people, prejudices being broken down and connections being formed. Amid the commotion, one of the hotel guests, an influential businessman in the city, approached Maria. He was someone who knew the business world well, but rarely had contact with the realities of life on the streets. "You've done something incredible here," "Lucia," he said, his eyes shining with new understanding, "I'm thinking about how I can help more. This needs to be seen by more people." Maria felt her heart race. This was the kind of impact she wanted. This wasn't just a one-off event, but a movement that could lead to real change. She shared her ideas on how they could work together to create more opportunities for the homeless, using their influence and network. He agreed, interested in collaborating. Throughout the event, Maria found herself talking to several other visitors, all touched by the stories and eager to get involved. What was once a simple exhibition plan became a movement of solidarity, with the promise that the conversation would continue well beyond that day. As night fell and the lights began to dim, Maria looked around, feeling a mixture of gratitude and relief. The event was a success, but more than that, it was a turning point. She saw change happening before her eyes, and it motivated her even more to continue her mission. It was time to bring these stories to a wider audience, to create more spaces for the voices of those on the margins. At the end of the night, as she said goodbye to the friends she had made along her journey, Maria felt more connected than ever. Every hug, every word of thanks, reaffirmed the importance of her experience. Lucia's life had changed, but the real transformation was just beginning. She returned to the shelter, tired but with a heart full of hope. As she lay down, she thought about the possibilities that lay ahead of her. With renewed determination, Maria was ready to continue the fight, not only for herself, but for all those who still didn't have a voice. Change was in her hands, and she had no intention of letting it slip away. After the exhibition, Maria woke up with mixed emotions. The success of the event still reverberated in her mind, and the energy of that night kept her going. However, a new reality also awaited her. She was no longer just a businesswoman. Now, Maria had a mission. Determined to change the lives of the people she had met, she decided it was time to take action. During breakfast at the shelter, Maria met with Carlos and Ana. The mood was light, and everyone was excited as they reminisced about the event. However, a more serious conversation soon emerged. Maria shared her plans to expand the initiative, including workshops and training programs to help homeless people reintegrate into society. "We need to create real opportunities, something that will make a difference in the long term," Maria said, her voice firm. Carlos agreed enthusiastically. "We can teach practical skills like cooking, crafts, and even money management. This can open doors for many of us." Ana, with her daughter by her side, added, "And we can also help other mothers who are struggling. Support is essential." With their vision shared, the three began planning how they could implement these ideas. They met weekly to discuss details, research resources, and even reach out to organizations that could offer support. The meetings were filled with energy and creativity, and each brought their own personal experiences to the table. Maria found herself increasingly motivated by the passion she saw in her friends' eyes. As her plans moved forward, Maria decided it was time to share her new mission with her employees at the hotel. It was crucial that everyone understood the purpose behind her move. She called a meeting and, with her heart racing, told everyone about the exhibition, the stories she had heard, and her plans to help the local community. The mood in the room was tense. Some employees seemed skeptical, while others were visibly excited. Maria knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was crucial that they understood the importance of this initiative. She shared the impact that stories could have on people's lives and how each person could contribute, whether through donations, time, or skills. "Our hotel isn't just a place to sleep, it's a part of the community. If we can join forces, we can really make a difference," Maria said, her voice full of conviction. She noticed that some of the staff were starting to get involved in the discussion, asking questions and offering ideas. The interaction brought a new life to the room, and empathy began to blossom among them. Over the next few days, Maria noticed a change in the atmosphere at the hotel. The staff became more engaged, and some began to participate in meetings with the homeless. Over time, a team of volunteers was formed, and the hotel began hosting events that promoted the stories of the homeless and their art. With the support of the team, Maria also sought out partnerships with local businesses. She organized a fundraising event, inviting guests and friends of the hotel. The event was a success, not only because of the amount raised, but also because of the positive energy that emanated from it. The stories and art of the homeless were on display, and many guests were touched by the experiences presented. With each new event, more people joined the cause, creating a movement that grew exponentially. Maria was constantly in contact with Carlos and Ana, exchanging ideas and planning new activities. The connection between them grew stronger and stronger, and together they were able to bring about real change in the lives of the people around them. However, it wasn't all plain sailing. Maria faced resistance from some members of the business community who saw her actions as a distraction from her profit goals. In meetings, she was challenged and questioned about the viability of her plans. But rather than let it get her down, she used these moments as opportunities to educate and inspire. Each criticism became a spur to further improve her initiatives. One day, as Maria was walking down the street, she met an elderly woman, Aline, who had become an important figure in the homeless community. Aline was known for her wisdom and for helping others find strength in their stories. Maria decided it was time to give her a voice too. "We could have an event dedicated to the stories of the elderly," Maria suggested. "They have so much experience and knowledge to share." Carlos and Ana agreed, excited about the idea. Together, they organized an afternoon of storytelling, where Aline and others could share their lives, their struggles, and their victories. The event was a success. Aline delighted the audience with her memories, and the connection between those present grew stronger. Each story told was a testament to the resilience and wisdom accumulated over the years. Maria realized that these initiatives were creating not only opportunities, but a true sense of community where people could come together and support each other. As the movement grew, Maria knew there was still much work to be done, but she was determined. With each new story she shared, she saw change happen, not only in the lives of the homeless, but also in the minds and hearts of the people who heard them. The impact was spreading, and Maria was ready to take this fight even further. Maria's movement was growing, but with growth came new challenges. As more people got involved, the pressure grew. Maria began to feel the weight of her responsibilities. She had to balance her role as an entrepreneur and an activist, and the lines between the two worlds often became blurred. Hotel commitments, events, and meetings were eating up her time, and her health began to suffer. One day, while organizing a workshop for the homeless, Maria felt a sharp pain in her head. It was her body screaming for attention, but the excitement and urgency to help everyone kept her going. However, she couldn't ignore the warning for long. During a presentation, her vision began to blur, and she could barely finish her speech. Carlos and Ana helped her sit down as the room murmured in concern. "You need some time for yourself," Ana said, taking Maria's hand. "We're all in this together, but we can't do it without you." Ana's words resonated deeply. Maria realized she had been neglecting to take care of herself, absorbing the needs of everyone around her while neglecting her own. The weight of guilt had kept her from seeking help, but now, she knew she had to change. After the incident, Maria decided it was time to reevaluate her priorities. With the help of Carlos and Ana, she began to delegate responsibilities. They created a more structured team, dividing tasks and allowing each person to contribute in a more balanced way. This not only relieved the pressure on Maria, but also allowed more voices to be heard within the movement. Meanwhile, the local community began to notice the change in Maria's leadership. The stories of the homeless were attracting media attention, and reports began to appear in newspapers and on television programs. The pressure of being in the spotlight, combined with criticism from some members of the business community, made Maria uneasy. One day, during a meeting with investors who were interested in supporting the movement, Maria felt the tension rising. They questioned the sustainability of her initiatives and the viability of continuing without a clear financial return. The sharp words from the investors made her uneasy. She knew she was doing the right thing, but the challenge of aligning her ideals with commercial expectations left her confused. That night, Maria decided to take a break. She went for a walk through the streets, reflecting on everything she had experienced. As she walked, she found Aline again, sitting on a bench, watching the city go by. The older woman's wisdom always inspired her, and Maria approached her, seeking comfort. "Life is full of uncertainties, isn't it?" Aline said, without taking her eyes off the street. "It's easy to get lost in other people's expectations." Maria sighed, feeling the truth in Aline's words. I'm trying to balance everything, but it's hard. Sometimes I feel like I'm moving away from what really matters." Aline turned to her, her deep eyes reflecting the streetlight. "Remember why you started. Stories are powerful. They have the ability to transform and heal. Don't let external pressures get in the way. Listen to your heart and intuition. That's what you must trust." Inspired by Aline's words, Maria decided she needed to return to her original focus, the stories and voices of the homeless. She returned to the shelter and, at dawn, called a meeting with everyone involved in the movement. With Carlos and Ana by her side, she expressed her determination to prioritize stories and the human experience. "We will continue to work together, but we need to focus on what really matters. Listening to and supporting each other," Maria said. "Let's bring more voices to the table and make sure every story is told. We can't let pressure distract us from our purpose." Maria's decision was welcomed by everyone. The focus on community and storytelling allowed the movement to gain even more momentum. Homeless people began sharing not only their struggles, but also their hopes and dreams. With each new story, empathy grew, and the positive impact became evident. As the movement grew, Maria felt light return to her life. The support that had once seemed distant was now palpable, and the connections that were being formed encouraged her. Through it all, she began to reconnect with her own story. By listening to others, Maria remembered her struggles, her triumphs, and what had brought her to this point. One evening, while organizing a new storytelling session at the shelter, Maria sat down with a notebook in hand. Inspired by the stories she heard, she began to write her own story, not as a successful businesswoman, but as a woman who faced challenges and overcame hardships. This practice helped her find herself again, allowing her authenticity to shine through. Days passed, and the movement continued to grow. Maria, now more balanced and focused, began planning a grand celebration event. It would be an opportunity not only to share stories, but also to honor each person's journey. The city was about to witness the power of human storytelling, and Maria was determined to make every voice heard. As the event approached, anxiety began to creep in again, but this time it was different. She wasn't alone. She had the strength of her community, the friends she had made, and the support network she was building. Maria knew that no matter the challenges, she had found her purpose and was willing to fight for it. The day of the big celebration arrived, and the city was filled with contagious energy. The event, called Voices of the Street, would be held in a central park, where the community would gather to share and hear the stories of the homeless. Maria woke up early, feeling the adrenaline pumping through her veins. There was a lot to do, but at the same time, she was eager to see her dream come true. With the help of Carlos and Ana, the park was transformed into a welcoming space. Tents were set up, with tables decorated with flowers and lights hanging from trees, creating a magical atmosphere. On each table, there was a notebook where participants could write their own stories and share their thoughts. It was an open invitation to vulnerability, a space for the exchange of experiences. As the hours passed, more and more people began to arrive. Maria saw familiar faces and new ones, all united by a common purpose. Anticipation was in the air, and she could feel the mix of nervousness and excitement as she waited for the homeless people to begin introducing themselves. As the event unfolded, Maria made a point of getting close to the participants. She spoke to each of them, listening to their stories, their struggles, and their dreams. What she didn't expect was the strength that these voices conveyed. Some people spoke about the hardships they had faced, while others shared moments of joy and hope. Tears and laughter mingled, creating a rich tapestry of emotions. Finally, it was time for the presentations. Maria took the stage, her heart pounding. The crowd was silent, and she could feel their expectant gazes. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. "Today, we are here to celebrate not just the hardships, but the resilience and strength of each and every one of you. The stories we will hear today are powerful, and each voice is a testament to the courage that lives in our hearts." The first resident to speak was Mr. Joaquim, an elderly man with white hair and a kind smile. He shared his story of how he lost his job and subsequently his home. But amidst the pain, he also spoke of the joy of meeting friends on the streets and how this helped him not to lose hope. The audience was silent, absorbing his words. After Joachim, other voices rose, each bringing a new perspective. Maria felt the energy in the air change with each story. The applause was intense and moving. What had once seemed like a lonely struggle now became a celebration of humanity. As the day progressed, Maria realized that the event was becoming much bigger than she had imagined. Connections were being made, and empathy was spreading like wildfire. People were coming together, talking, offering help and support. A group of young people approached a resident who had shared his story of struggle and offered to help him find shelter. As the event drew to a close, Maria decided it was time to share her own story. Nervously, she took the stage, her heart racing. "I have a story too," she began, her voice shaking. "But it's not just about what happened to me. It's about what I've learned from listening to each of you. Life is full of challenges, and we all have our own struggles. What I want you to know is that we are stronger together. The power of stories can change lives, and together we can transform our community." Maria's words echoed through the crowd. She saw tears in some people's eyes and smiles on others' faces. At the end of her speech, a wave of applause erupted, and Maria felt the love and solidarity in the air. The stories shared became a collective testament to human strength and resilience. As the celebration came to a close, Maria felt exhausted but fulfilled. People were starting to disperse, but there was a glimmer of hope in their eyes. She knew that this event had marked a turning point, not just for the homeless, but for the entire community. As Maria prepared to leave the park, she ran into Aline once more. The woman was smiling, full of life. "You did an incredible job, my dear," Aline said, wrapping Maria in a warm hug. "Stories are powerful, and you have brought to light what so many try to hide." "Thank you, Aline. But I didn't do this alone. It was a team, a community. We are all responsible for this," Maria replied, with a smile on her face. "We still have a lot of work ahead of us, but today, I feel like we are on the right track." Maria said goodbye to Aline and began walking back to the hotel. As she walked, she looked up at the stars that were beginning to shine in the night sky. A feeling of gratitude washed over her. The celebration was not just an event. It was a milestone in her journey, proof that every story mattered and that every voice had the power to create change. After the voices from the street, celebration, Maria found herself immersed in a whirlwind of emotions and reflections. The experience had awakened in her an even greater determination to continue her mission of helping the homeless. However, she knew that the journey was far from over. The event had been a starting point, a spark that needed to be nurtured so that it could become a lasting fire. The next day, Maria met with Carlos and Anna to discuss what the next steps would be. They met at a cafe near the hotel, where the aroma of fresh coffee hung in the air, bringing a comforting warmth. "We need to do more than just an annual celebration. The voices we heard yesterday deserve to be heard every day," Maria said, with an intensity in her eyes that reflected her passion. Carlos, ever the pragmatist, nodded in agreement. "We need to create a space where these stories can continue to be shared. And not only that, we need to implement programs that help these people find the resources and support they need." Anna, with her ever-creative perspective, suggested, "What if we did a series of workshops? We could teach practical skills, from financial management to personal empowerment. This could help create a sense of community among participants." Maria loved the idea and began to envision a calendar of events that could include workshops, support groups, and even opportunities for homeless people to share their stories on a regular platform. "Let's call it the transformation path," she suggested, feeling the energy of the idea take shape. With excitement palpable, the trio began planning. Over the next few weeks, Maria and her team worked tirelessly to gather resources and lay the groundwork for the transformation path. They reached out to local organizations for partnerships, secured donations, and, with the support of the community, began to set up workshops and support groups. Maria also decided that it was important to hear the stories of homeless people before implementing the workshops. So she organized regular meetings in the park where the celebration had taken place. These meetings would allow participants to share their experiences and help shape the themes and topics of the workshops. The meetings began modestly, but soon became a vibrant space for sharing and learning. Maria sat in circles formed by homeless people, listening intently as they shared their stories. She marveled at the diversity of experiences. Some were filled with sadness, others with hope and resilience. What surprised her most was the resilience and strength that each person demonstrated, even in the face of hardship. Among the attendees was Aline, who became a constant presence. Her wisdom and experiences became a source of inspiration for many. "I have always said that each of us has a story worth telling," Aline repeated, as she shared her life lessons and encouraged others to do the same. Over time, the transformation path gained momentum, and workshops began to take shape. Maria and her team were determined to ensure that each workshop was more than just an informational session. They wanted it to be a transformative experience. To this end, they invited experts from a variety of fields: therapists, financial professionals, and artists, all willing to share their skills and knowledge. Finally, the opening day of the workshops arrived. Maria was nervous, but also full of anticipation. The space where the workshops would be held was decorated in a welcoming way, with tables arranged in a circular shape, creating an environment of support and collaboration. She knew that this was a crucial moment for the continuation of the movement that had begun. When the doors opened, a variety of people began to arrive. It wasn't just the homeless. There were also members of the community, people who were willing to listen and learn. Maria was moved to see so many people gathered, all seeking a better future. The first workshop was on self-confidence and overcoming challenges, led by a therapist who had experience working with vulnerable people. As the session progressed, Maria realized the impact her words were having on the people present. The shared stories, the laughter, and even the tears were building a deep connection between the participants. Maria remembered her own struggles and challenges, how alone she had felt at the beginning of her journey. Now, seeing those faces around her, she felt that something extraordinary was happening. The path of transformation was not just a project. It was a new life for everyone involved. As the workshops continued to unfold over the next few weeks, Maria noticed that the dynamic was changing. Trust began to blossom among the homeless people, and many of them began to come forward with their own stories of resilience. They were no longer just listeners. They were now becoming tellers of their own narratives. The stories that emerged during the workshops were heartwarming and inspiring. One woman named Sophia shared how she had lost everything in a fire, but her determination to start over led her to enroll in cooking classes. Another touching story was that of Lucas, who had spent years on the streets but found his purpose in helping others reconnect with their families. As Maria continued to nurture the path of transformation, she realized that this project had become a true reflection of what she believed in. It was a collective journey, where each voice had the power to create meaningful change. She realized that stories, in all their vulnerability, were the key to transformation. With the implementation of the Path of Transformation workshops, Maria experienced a rebirth of hope not only in the participants, but also in herself. The warmth of the community surrounded her, and the vibrant energy of the stories told, the challenges overcome, and the connections formed fueled her desire to continue the fight. However, as with every journey, new challenges were bound to arise. A month after the workshops began, Maria decided to organize an evaluation of the program. She wanted to know how people were feeling, what they were learning, and how they could improve. To do this, she proposed a special meeting where everyone could express their opinions in a safe and welcoming environment. The day of the meeting arrived, and the atmosphere was more lively than ever. The space was full of participants, and the tables were decorated with flowers and handmade posters, displaying motivational phrases that reflected the spirit of overcoming that permeated the group. Maria was anxious, but at the same time excited about the possibility of hearing directly from the voices she valued so much. During the meeting, she opened the floor for everyone to share their experiences. Aline, one of the most engaged participants, raised her hand. "I just wanted to say that these workshops have changed my life. I always thought I had no value, but now I'm seeing that my story is important. I've started writing a book about my experiences." Aline's words brought tears to many eyes. Maria smiled, knowing that this was the true essence of what they were building together. As others began to speak up, sharing their achievements and even their struggles, the room filled with intense emotions. However, It wasn't all sunshine and roses. One of the participants, Tiago, raised a point that worried Maria. "I love what we're doing here, but I feel like we need more resources. We can't just rely on donations and community support. How can we ensure that this becomes something sustainable in the long term?" Tiago's comment echoed in everyone's minds. Maria knew he was right. The sustainability of the path of transformation was crucial, and she needed to act quickly. With a lump in her throat, she replied, "This is something I've been thinking about for a while. We need to come together to find ways to fund our workshops and expand our reach. Let's brainstorm together how we can achieve this." The room was filled with a collaborative spirit, and ideas began to emerge. From creating a crowdfunding campaign to proposing charity events, everyone seemed more excited than the last. However, by the end of the meeting, Maria still felt the weight of responsibility. This was a defining moment, and she knew she had to lead this initiative. Inspired by the group's energy, Maria began meeting with Carlos and Ana to develop a strategic plan. They spent hours brainstorming possibilities, outlining ideas, and creating a timeline. "We could do a fundraiser, something big where everyone can get involved and contribute. We need to show the community the impact we're having," Carlos suggested, excitement evident in his voice. Finally, they decided that the event would be a large community fair, with music, local food, and booths where the homeless could sell their handmade products. "This will give them a platform and, at the same time, raise funds for our project," said Maria, excited about the idea. With a plan in mind, the trio began mobilizing the community. They distributed flyers, used social media, and engaged local organizations to ensure the fair was a success. Every step was infused with hope, and their enthusiasm was contagious. As the day of the event approached, however, Maria felt the pressure mounting. The nights of planning and days filled with activities began to take their toll. In a vulnerable moment, she stopped to reflect on everything that had happened in her life in the past few months. She remembered the insecure woman she used to be, lost in the shadows of her old life, and realized how far she had come. On the day of the fair, the sun was shining brightly, creating a perfect backdrop for the event. The park was full of life, with families and friends gathering to celebrate. Maria was nervous, but the energy around her was undeniable. She stood in front of the makeshift stage and looked out at the crowd. "Welcome to the first ever Transformation Path Community Fair. Today, we celebrate not only our stories, but also our collective achievements," Maria began, her voice ringing with emotion. As she spoke, the crowd applauded, and Maria felt the warmth of acceptance and support. During the event, Maria and her team managed a variety of activities. There was a musical performance, a conversation circle where stories were shared, and booths with products made by homeless people. The atmosphere was one of celebration and unity, and Maria realized that the community had come together to support a greater goal. As the day progressed, the event exceeded all expectations. Booth sales were booming, and attendees were sharing their stories, inspiring each other to connect and support one another. Maria saw Aline selling copies of her book, and her heart swelled with pride. By the end of the day, Maria was exhausted, but the joy of seeing the impact of the event outweighed any fatigue. As the sun set over the horizon, she turned to Carlos and Ana. "We did it. This is just the beginning," she said, a twinkle in her eye. Carlos smiled. "And now we have the resources to continue our work. The road ahead is still long, but we have a solid foundation now." Maria realized that the path of transformation was not just a program. It was a shared journey. Every wrinkle on her face, every tear of joy and pain, was a testament to a collective struggle. And most of all, she was ready to face the challenges that lay ahead, knowing that she would not be alone.